Hi, Kevin McDonald here and welcome to the Progressive Property Podcast. On this week I'm joined by Sam Waterson. Now Sam is a deal packager based up in Leeds, and I thought it'd be interesting to get him on here and talk to you about what he does in his business and maybe give you some ideas on how you could get into packaging and some of the other stuff he's doing as well, because he also runs a lettings business, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. So Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So for anyone who's listening, tell us a little bit about Sam. Let's say start right at the beginning, before property. What were you doing and what got you interested in getting into property?
So for me, I've always worked in sales,
Right.
whether it was selling carpets part-time while I worked, while I was at college still, field sales when I finished university, but I'd always wanted to run my own business. So I kind of always had this burning desire to start a business, and I never really knew what I wanted to do. I never really had that killer idea that was, this is going to be the idea.
Right.
And I think as a victim of the sort of Sarah Beeny effect, in 2006, 2007, me and a friend bought a house together.
Right.
And spent 6 weeks doing it up in the evenings and the weekends. And then after 6 months, we got the mortgage companies to come out and do like a further advance.
Yeah.
So we kind of thought, hang on a minute, this is a really good way to make money, which isn't necessarily a business.
Yeah.
And then it snowballed from there really. So we went on to buy another few properties. But as you can imagine, if you think about the sort of calendar at the time,
Yeah.
we're going from 2006, 2007. So what happened was, halfway through doing a refurb in like 2007, the credit crunch came along, and that was the end of me sort of buying any more properties and moving on to the next one because we couldn't refinance.
Right.
So I think it was a year and a half or 2.5 years of going back into employment, back into a sales job, while also managing my own properties.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a bit of a natural progression really, because it started off because I'm more good at this sort of the sales and the marketing, as you'd imagine, side of things, advertising the properties, doing the viewings, signing tenants up, looking after the relationships, but I was absolutely hopeless at the sort of more technical side of things, so like the maintenance, the repairs.
Yeah.
So I started working with a local handyman who would do all the maintenance for me. So at the time I'm sat there going, right, so I've just passed off a load of stuff that I was doing to someone and paying them money for it. Really what I should do is look to replace the money that I'm paying out by doing something that I'm good at. So I just mentioned to a few people that I knew who had properties, if you've got any empty rooms, let me know and I'll find you a tenant.
Right.
So inadvertently I started a sort of room finding,
Right. So
tenant finding service. Yeah.
Accidental letting agent.
Well, yeah, I never really viewed it as letting agency. It was just, and I found all the old Facebook groups I set up sort of 10 years ago the other day, and I was having a chuckle to myself. It was really just, do you need help finding people for rooms?
Yeah.
Because that's specifically what I was good at, because I had a few HMOs. So I started filling rooms for people, and then a friend of mine knew what I was doing, was halfway through doing a small refurb on one of his properties, but was going travelling.
Yeah.
So he ran out of time, and he says, look, I'm halfway through putting in a bathroom, can you finish that off, decorate the house, put flooring in, put tenants in, look after it for 4 months while I'm on the other side of the world. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And that was when the penny dropped. That I was like, hang on a minute, I quite enjoy this, and I quite like this, and I reckon I could do this for other people. So I made the decision to work for myself and start my own business. So originally it wasn't going to be a letting agency, because I had gone through the process of finding a property, buying a property and doing the refurb myself.
Yeah.
I'd kind of done all the stuff before you need tenants.
Yeah.
So I saw it more as a landlord services business, where I would maybe go in and paint the house, get it furnished, put a washing machine in, then get the tenants ready. So I hadn't necessarily thought of the sourcing too much, but it was definitely leaned towards more things that a landlord could outsource, whether it be, finding the tenants or anything that happens before that or after that, or anything, just, outsourcing the roles and responsibilities of a landlord in exchange for a fee. What happened then was I spent the next few years I started part-time, worked for 6 months full-time, one sort of crossed over to the other, left paid employment, and continued going, and ended up becoming more of a letting agent and a managing agent, focusing on quite a lot of student properties in Leeds. So I kind of fell.
Were you still buying at that point, or you just stopped the buying completely?
Because of the issue with the credit crunch. I'd borrowed a lot of money on my final project. So what I did was I just consolidated all my rents to pay those debts off. So I wasn't really in a position to buy any more houses. So I just paid everything down over a few years, and kind of fell into being a letting agent, because I found that people had a lot more need for finding tenants and then managing properties than they did the other stuff. So kind of did that for sort of 4 or 5 years with no real direction.
Yeah.
And that was my first effort at running a business. So I'd always wanted to run a business. I knew that I had what it took to run a business. But the problem I had was I was such a salesman that I was very much focused on the sale.
Right.
And not the other aspects of running a business. So that business had its good times, it had its bad times. But unfortunately in 2016 that business went into liquidation. Right. Which was a moment of realisation for me, because I was sat there and I'd had a business that hadn't worked. And then I looked at all the reasons why it hadn't worked and all the things that had gone well over the time, and then realised that I'd actually generated a lot of skills that maybe hadn't been applied properly. Yeah. That if I was to go back to the drawing board and start again, I could apply all the things that had gone well, eliminate all the things that hadn't gone well, and so started again at the start of 2017 with the business that I currently run. Originally it was a straightforward letting agency, plus we did a bit of estate agency. Yep. With me not being an estate agent, not being able to get involved and influence it, I always felt a little bit uncomfortable with owning an estate agency that I wasn't involved in. So in 2018 we stopped doing that side of the business and started looking more towards sourcing, with a view to, if we want to get in front of a landlord, rather than waiting until they need a tenant, if we can get them a lot further up the sales cycle, it means we could build a relationship before they even need the
so source them tenant. The property and then manage it for them as well.
I've always liked the model. You get paid to find the property, but you also get in front of the landlord at the earliest possible opportunity, where you can build that relationship, so that when it comes to them deciding which letting agent they want to use, they're not going to use anybody else. Yeah. And also with the refurb element, it meant that if I was in control of the refurb, I could make sure the house was done right, so that when we're managing it, we're not managing other people's problems. So that was the plan. And then back end of 2018, 2019, we lost a really big landlord client of ours who was a developer that was converting big office blocks into multiple blocks of flats, studio flats. Right. They were just growing and growing and growing, and were covering a huge territory across the north. And they decided that it was better to consolidate everything down into one company who could manage everything for them. So we lost quite a sizable chunk of our portfolio then, and that was really the catalyst for me to go, okay, so we've lost quite a big part of our business, but then we gain all the time that was involved in delivering that service. And that's when I went sourcing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to use this time personally to give it a real good go and make that into kind of a business in its own right.
So during that journey from say 2006 through to sort of, that took you up to what, mid 2019s? 2020?
Start of 2019 was when I decided to go all in on sourcing.
And where did you come across Progressive? How did that all happen?
I think I'd always been aware of Progressive, because when I first started my original business, it was me in my bedroom, and for 18 months I didn't have any staff, just worked in my back bedroom, and then moved into a small office and then grew a small team. So when I started the new business, I was very acutely aware that I was very lonely and isolated in the early days. Yeah. So I made the decision to go out there into the industry more and to get involved in like the Facebook groups, networking and things like that. And I think I must have joined the Progressive community. Yeah. I've always struggled to go to the networking meetings because my partner's a nurse. So she typically works Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which is naturally when most of the networking meetings are. So I did a lot more of my networking online in the Facebook community. Right.
So if you're listening to this, by the way, and you're not a member of the Progressive Property Facebook community, then make sure you do join. So if you listen to this on the podcast or on YouTube, then head over to Facebook and just search Progressive Property Community. There's about 40,000 investors like Sam in there, all helping, supporting each other on the journey. So so you found the community, and you then got introduced to, you were looking at deal packaging, and you did with Katie Wilson, the deal packaging training?
Yeah, so I've done sourcing now properly for the last 3.5 years, and then I think it must have been about October last year, saw Katie Wilson was running a webinar, master, like Discovery Day. Yeah. Jumped on that, loved the content, loved her as a trainer, signed up to the masterclass, which was in January, and then signed up to the mastermind. So I'm now 3 months into doing the 12-month mastermind with Katie.
Right.
Just looking to take the sourcing side of things to the next level.
It's interesting when you talk to you, and it's a very similar journey to mine and what other people do, is where I was trying to do property for a while, tried lots of things that weren't really working, but I was trying to find my feet. Got my own lettings business, done sourcing, and it's like you follow that same path, but the key is we said the loneliness bit that you mentioned about, because I was at home in my bedroom trying to do a property business. I didn't know anybody. So how important is the community, do you think, to you and to anyone who's listening to this thinking about they're alone in property, they need support in property? How important are other property people and sort of that community to your success?
For me, it's massive. You know, I named the new company Watson Co, and the co is to represent the people who are involved as well. So it's the community, the cooperation, the collaboration. It's all those things. So it's the staff, the business partners, the clients, the tenants. It's everybody that goes into it. Because I realised from my first business that it's a massive family in property. And the thing that I realised was, in this industry, you don't have direct competitors, because there's so many different ways of doing it. There's so many different strategies that everybody's almost a business partner or an opportunity that you've not yet tapped into. So from a lettings point of view, we specialise in HMO conversions. So there might be another letting agent in our town who doesn't do HMOs, who can go refer to us a landlord who does HMOs. And we don't do students at the moment, so we could refer into them a landlord that does student lets. So what could have been seen as a competitor in the past is actually a collaborator. And equally, you know, you go into the progressive community, and if you write a post about what you do, invariably there'll be tens, if not hundreds of other people who specialise in that, who will connect with you. And then you can bounce ideas off people who are in exactly the same position. And sometimes you already have the knowledge, you just need the validation to push through with it, and it gives you the confidence to do it, especially when you see other people doing it. You know, it's interesting, you know, when you go to the sort of the property training seminars, I've been on different ones for different industries, and there's always someone up there making outlandish claims about success, etc. But with property, it's like you can see the people physically doing it in front of you, and it's so true. And I just think it's everybody can succeed together if they all work together.
That is so important. Is a lot of people I speak to, and even myself, when I tried to do it alone, it was very, very difficult. But being around people, and it's that bit about validation. It's, I guess, you hear about all these people and they've got a great idea, but they never do anything with it. And quite often it's because not because they don't have the confidence to, but they don't have anybody to validate the idea for them. So being around people that will validate that idea. In terms of your sourcing, does the community help you with building your sourcing business? In terms of, are you starting to now use that community to find investors to source for, refurb for, etc.? Do you find that builds that side of the business for you?
Well, what I did quite early on with sourcing was I went into the HMO conversions. There seemed to be a demand for them from people, but also from an income point of view, higher fees, bigger refurbs, the lettings on the back end of it. So we've kind of niched into HMOs quite a lot in the last few years. And what you find is, when we finish a project, and I'll put finished project for a client, it then attracts people who are then interested in those kind of projects. So all the time you'll have, people firing off messages saying, I've heard you're the person who does this specific niche in this specific area. So I think the community is really good for that. But also there's a lot of people there who you'll never do business with, but if they know what you do, when someone comes to them and says, I'm looking for someone to do a HMO in Leeds, which is where I am, they know to think of you. So it's the sort of third connection referrals that it's really good for.
With packaging, there's a lot of people starting in property and they go, I don't have any money to get started. I'm just going to sell some deals and I'm going to practice packaging to try and get going. And then there's people like you that have gone through proper training on how to become a packager. For somebody who's watching this thinking, I'm going to use a sourcer, what sort of things should they be asking the sourcer to make sure that sourcer is going to deliver them a good service and that the sourcer knows what they're actually doing?
So if you're wanting to use a sourcer, I think one of the main things we'd ask them about compliance and how they comply with all the necessary regulations, because I think a lot of people until they get into it, don't realise that they're as heavily regulated as estate agents.
Yeah.
That is an interesting one. You know, one thing I found was by being very specific about what I can get in my area because of what's achievable, you know, 9 times out of 10 people might not be interested, but that one person who is interested, you can go on and do business with because it's relevant. So ask them, you know, what's possible in your area? Can you give me some examples of deals that you can find or you have found in your area? You know, what other strategies do you do and how do they work?
Yeah.
So for example, we do HMOs. You know, I've got countless examples of where they've worked, you know, showing the tenant history, so I can back that up. So ask the sourcing agent to sort of back up any claims they make. If they're putting numbers in front of you, how did they arrive at those numbers? If they've made assumptions, what assumptions have they made? What parameter, you know, if they're making a guesstimate, for example, on a refurb, what allowances have they given themselves to be as accurate as possible without obviously not knowing everything?
So I seen a post this weekend in a community, not the Progressive community, but I'm in many communities, and it was somebody offering to source a serviced accommodation unit.
Yeah.
And they had 110 quid a night, and they had £1,700 a month profit. And just loads of people were coming in going, interested.
Yeah.
And just quickly doing some numbers, the £1,700 a month profit was at 100% occupancy.
Yeah.
Right? And 110 quid a night is it 110 quid a night?
Yeah.
Now, as somebody who's going to buy a deal from a sourcer, who obviously as a sourcer you're going to do the due diligence, but how important is it that the other person does the due diligence? And I guess what due diligence should somebody be doing on a sourcer to make sure they're using the right type of people like yourself?
I think the best thing to do if you're looking to buy a property through a sourcer is get your own deal analyzer. Not just rely on the numbers the sourcer's giving you, but get your own deal analyzer, plug the sourcer's numbers into your deal analyzer, and then assess it yourself. So when I put my deals in front of clients, I don't give them a deal analyzer. I give them headline figures, and I get them to go away and work it out themselves. One, because I don't know what loan to value they're going to use, what interest rate they'll get, certain other things that are personal to them, but also it gets them doing the exercise. And if they're not comfortable putting the numbers through a deal analyzer, then it's almost a red flag that's coming on down the line. There'll always be someone in your area who you will know. So the good thing about property is I'll meet people at Leeds networking events who I won't do business with because they're too local. Yeah. But then they might see a deal in another part of the country and come to me and say, look, I've been offered this deal in Brighton or wherever. Can you just have a look at it for me? And then from an impartial point of view, I can then give them a bit of assistance. Yeah. So lean on people within the community, lean on people within your network, make sure you're building your network, building community connections, so that if you have got a deal, you can then reach out to a sourcer that you trust in your area, who can just say, look, I think that's right or I think that's wrong. Because I can look at numbers on a deal and know within seconds if there's something fishy. So that's a piece of advice I'd give. When
you say as well, like somebody else at Leeds PPN event and stuff would spot find a deal in Brighton, the fact that you're in the deal packaging mastermind, do you look at co-sourcing with other sources where you then go, I've got this to a sourcer you know in Brighton, I've got this deal in Brighton, do you know anyone who might want to buy it? Do you know the area? Could we do something together? Or are you very much local?
I just stick specifically to my area. So because I had my agency, like I'm very fortunate in a way that a lot of property investors or property sources, because of the nature of the business, then do lettings. Yeah. And then they have to learn lettings. Whereas I've done lettings for years. Yeah. That's kind of in my blood. So I've gone into it as being a letting agent that does sourcing, and I very much think like that. So one thing I realised was, you put me in another city, I lose my advantage because I know my town like the back of my hand. So I've specifically focused just on sourcing in my area, and I don't co-source either, because typically with a co-sourcing arrangement, someone will go, here's a property, and someone else will go, here's the landlord, and they'll put the investor, they'll put the two together. But actually, in reality, to get a deal together, packaged, over the line, takes so much more. Yeah. You know, and any co-source deal I've done in the past, I've done 95% of the work. It's fallen out of bed twice, and it's not worth it. Unless they want to split it on a 90-10 split, it's just not worth it. You know, I'm better off spending my time finding my own investors than relying on someone else to bring the investors to the table and me bringing the deals. If somebody brings me a deal and it's not on my radar, I'll give them you know, a kickback or referral fee because I wasn't looking at that deal.
Yeah.
I did a block of flats a few years ago, and the guy just sent me a link and says, "What do you think of these?" And it was in an auction, and we ended up buying it. Make a phone call, got an investor on board. You know, we got them to take it out of the auction. We bought it completed within 28 days. So I gave him $1,000 for that because it wasn't on my radar.
Right.
But that wasn't a co-source deal because I still did all the work.
Yeah.
I still made it a deal and made it, you know, into a fee. But it wouldn't have been on my radar without that person doing it. So I'm happy to collaborate, but I just think co-sourcing sometimes, it's just, it has to be done right.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're very much on my thoughts in terms of gold mine area, is know your area. The biggest thing in property really is you are the subject matter expert of your local area. And even you go a half an hour away, it's suddenly, well, I don't know the streets.
Yeah.
So yeah, so interesting.
One of the biggest successes I'm having at the moment, or have had recently, has been directly because I'm niching down. So no longer am I a sourcing agent in Leeds. I'm a sourcing agent in Leeds that does HMOs.
Yeah.
I'm also a sourcing agent that does HMOs and can manage them after refurbing them. I'm a HMO sourcing agent in Leeds that focuses on properties within the Article 4 area that need a planning change of use. So automatically, by continually niching down, I end up in a sort of group of one, where I don't really have many competitors, if any. Therefore, when somebody needs that,
they've only got you to go
there's
to.
only me to go to.
Yeah.
So, you know, continually niche down and become very, very specific about what you do. Because if you're specific about what you do, people will remember that.
Yeah.
And if they remember that, they can refer you and recommend you. And I get off-market deals now, not because I do off-market advertising, but because people know what I do. So they'll come to me and say, I've met a guy, or I've viewed a property, I can't do anything with it. It's exactly what you do. Can you do anything with it? And 9 times out of 10 we can. So yeah, great piece of advice there is just hammer down your niche.
For anybody listening to this, there's some absolute gold dust there. I see a lot of people. I spent years, my first 10 years in property I was trying to do so many different things. I did nothing well. It's niching down, being specific about what you do. Choose that one market sector, that one area. Stop trying to take over the world. I meet investors, say, where do you invest? London. What part of London? The whole city, anywhere. It's like, it's too big, you can't do that. Nobody's going to know you. So some absolute gold dust here for anyone listening. Make sure you're taking notes on this stuff. You mentioned compliance. So what type of compliance do you need? If somebody is wanting to become a sourcer, or they're looking to use a sourcer, what is the compliance that they need to be making sure that sourcer has, or that they have if they want to source?
I'm going to be a bit controversial here.
Yeah.
I think one of the mistakes people make when they get into sourcing is they start doing all the compliance first. But in reality, you only need to be compliant to make money.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to be compliant to start building a list of potential investors, to view properties, to start running numbers and getting an idea of how things go in your head. So sometimes people procrastinate getting started on the stuff that makes the money because they want to get their anti-money laundering. Yeah. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying, you know, don't go, oh, I've got to spend £1,000 getting compliant. I'm not going to start.
Yeah, learn your area first.
Learn your area, learn what a deal looks like. Best piece of advice I can give you is work out where you want to do it, work out what works there, and then go find people who want that, because that's how you make money.
That's such good advice, because you see people and they get all the compliance, and then they go learn in the area and looking for deals, and then they go, oh, I don't actually like this. Yeah. You've just spent all that money on compliance to find out you don't like it. Figure out if you like it first, and then find a deal. You get a deal, then get the compliance.
Exactly.
So let's say they learn their area, they go looking for deals, they build relationships, they build a list, and then they find that first deal and they got to get compliant. What do they need?
So register with anti-money laundering. Great thing about the government in this country, you know, a lot of people have a lot of criticisms, is if you go on the government website, everything's written in black and white. So anti-money laundering registration, having the right insurance. Honestly, you're asking me questions that I've not thought about for years because we've been compliant for that long. PRS membership.
Yes, that's the Property Redress Scheme, PRS.
Yeah, client account. If you're going to be handling reservation fees, things like that. What else is there? Contracts. It's always good to have a contract.
Yeah, professional indemnity insurance, mentioned that.
Yeah, professional indemnity, business insurance. One thing I did, which you could do if you've got time, is read the Estate Agents Act. I think it's 1979 was the most recent update.
Do it at night time when you're looking to fall asleep.
Yes, yeah. There's a few things I've done in the past that have been quite painful, but read the Estate Agents Act and read the PRS Code of Practice, because they will kind of spell out exactly how you're meant to operate. It's not light reading, but it's definitely worth doing it. But I went through a spell at the start of 2017 when we set up, where I read every Act of Parliament, every guidance note that was relevant to the industry, and made sure that our systems, processes and business was set up right, to the point now where you ask me what the compliance is and I generally can't remember everything.
Yeah.
Because it's just set up.
Yeah.
ICO membership.
Yeah.
For your
So, data protection.
data protection policy, data protection training for your staff, privacy document on your website. I think that's pretty much.
Yeah, that's about it. So re-listen to that section of the podcast. There's a lot of compliance there, but as I said, you don't need that to get going. What you need to get going is get out there, looking at your area, finding some deals and getting to know people to start with, to decide if it's what you want to do in the first place. So you started property 2006. You got all that journey through to 2019. You've started building the packaging business and the agency business over the last 3 to 4 years. What's the outcome? What's the goal? Are you looking to take over the world? What's the longer term plan?
So when I started, because I got into property doing it my own way, when I started looking at property education in 2017 and going on courses and training with people, I realised that fundamentally there's two wheels to the bike. There's finding the property and then there's finding the exit. So the exit could either be an investor that will pay you and take it on as a sourcing client, or a JV partner who will fund it, or a private investor who will fund it. So for the past 3 or 4 years, I've focused mainly on finding the deals.
Yeah.
I've now got to the point where I've got a team of people who are finding deals regularly. I've got 2 project managers, interior designers who are turning them around. I've got a lettings team who are putting the tenants and managing. Everything's running like clockwork. So now I'm shifting my focus onto the next part, which is raising the funds. I've now got a model that works, that's proven with multiple examples. So now my role is to raise money. And the goal is to, say for example, we find 2 properties, source one, keep one for myself, source one, keep one. So I've set myself a target of 20 HMO properties myself personally. Would like to look at some bigger developments, but I'm very much a fan of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I've got a model that works. The sausage machine, as I call it, is churning out the results. So my goal now is to elevate my knowledge with the Deal Packaging Mastermind, level up my network, my connections, the people I spend time with, the level that they operate to, start building my portfolio out. I've not bought a property really for 10 years. Start buying again for myself, start building the cash flow. Because I've been focusing mainly on building the business, that's more of a wealth generation strategy where the business has a value, the business generates income, but then that income pays for staff, equipment, offices, etc. So now I want to look at my personal income, get that to a level where me and the family are sorted, and then.
So your target for 20 HMOs by when? We're going to hold you. The whole community is going to hold them to account. By when, Sam?
So we've got a goal of agreeing 2 a month.
Right.
So we want to agree 24 this year. I think since December we're on 7 so far.
And that's keep 12, sell 12.
Well, I've got 3 that I've put in my name.
Right.
So the others are going to clients. So I would have thought, looking at how we would scale and accelerate, 5 years realistically.
Okay.
3 if I go off full guns blazing.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set you a challenge at 3 years.
3 years.
We're going to get you back on the podcast in 3 years' time. We're going to let you know where we're at.
Yeah. Okay. Deal it.
3 years, everybody. Put a note in your diaries right now. Check out 19th of April 2025. Search Sam Waterson on YouTube, Facebook, wherever, and say, "Did you hit your target, Sam?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 20 and 36 months.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's go. So, for people, are you active on social media?
Yeah.
What's the best places to find you?
Facebook generally.
Right.
Although I did recently get banned from Facebook for 30 days for making a joke.
So don't tell us what the joke was.
It was just
in case, because we're on podcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
We don't want to be banned.
It was just, I made a joke out of myself, but I used certain words that I think.
Don't tell us what those words were.
I won't. Can be linked.
Direct message him and find out.
Yeah. Just something stupid. Right. But anyway, so I got a 30-day ban on Facebook, and then used that as a springboard to try and, use Instagram more because
Right.
I've never been as good on Instagram. So I'm trying to push my Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. But the beauty of my name is I'm quite easy to find
Right.
because there's not many people who have my name, so I stand out. But if you do want to connect with me, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn are probably the main ones.
Cool.
I've recently started a podcast.
What's that called?
It's called The Evolution of a Property Business. And the idea with that is my background at uni was IT and technology used by businesses. So I'm a massive fan of tech and gadgets. So the idea is to talk about how people's businesses can evolve and how a deal would evolve and just things evolve through.
Speaking of tech then, there'll be a lot of people interested in tech. A lot of people are on about, prop tech and stuff. What are the tech that you use that have made the biggest influence for you in property or helped you the most? And then a second lead-on question is, what sort of things should people be looking at or what are you excited about that's coming in tech? So first is, what are you using that massively helps you?
So the big turning point for me was when I started using a CRM system.
Right. Which one do you use?
HubSpot.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people in the community use Podio. Very, very similar functionality. But what I found was people are always saying, what's the best technology for this? What's the best technology for that? And what I realized was the best technology is a combination of technologies. So what I've created using HubSpot as the focal point is about 21 or 22 different pieces of software applications that create a workflow or a process that just makes everything so streamlined. So HubSpot's been really great because of how customizable it is.
Right.
So we've now got something as simple as we could run a direct-to-vendor marketing campaign with a mobile number on the letter. They could text that letter, and any one of my staff using their phones will get that text message and can respond as if they are using that mobile phone.
Right.
So that's something I've set up recently that I was really pleased about. In terms of what am I excited about going forwards, difficult one. I'm trying to get my head into paid ads, so like Facebook ads and the psychology behind getting people to engage.
Right.
I'm quite good at generating an organic investor, for example, and then taking the investor through my workflows. So the next stage for me will be learning how to use social media. For example, retargeting. I was having a WhatsApp conversation with my missus at the weekend about buying a bikini for holiday, and I sent her a photo of one that I'd seen online and said, look, why didn't you buy that one? So today I go on Twitter to look at the football chatter, and there's the bikini company advertising to me.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that.
It's just a conversation and a photograph send.
Yeah, because I'd Googled it on my phone, their website's now put a tracking pixel, which means I go on Twitter and I'm getting hit by their ads. And I know it's not groundbreaking stuff, but I just think it's brilliant, and I haven't quite learned to master that yet. So I think the thing that I'm excited about is learning paid ads, because not a lot of people in property use social media to its fullest.
Yeah.
I mean, some people struggle to post.
Yeah.
So taking that to the next level of using paid ads and proper marketing and branding and things like that are quite exciting. In terms of like pieces of technology, I don't know, is there anything sexy on the horizon? I think everyone's talking about NFTs, aren't they? But I haven't got a clue what they are.
NFTs. Ask Rob more about NFTs. He'll tell you all about NFTs. He's even got me to buy one.
Okay.
So and I don't even know what it is. But NFTs are non-functional tokens. Yeah. Google it. That's what I'll say. It's not for the Progressive Property Podcast. Google it or go on Rob Moore's Disruptors podcast and he'll tell you all about NFTs.
Yeah.
So, Sam, really appreciate you coming in. Just before we let you go, top 2 or 3 tips to anyone who's listening to this thinking, I'd like to get started in property, sort of first steps to get going, to get started, or to get restarted if they kind of went through what you did and hit a roadblock, had to stop. How start or restart?
So if you're wanting to get into property or you wanted to get back into property, I think the best thing to do is attend some free training, because there's so many different strategies that you can choose that if you go into it thinking, I want to do everything, you're going to fail. Like eventually the best investors are the ones who can apply different strategies to different properties. But to start with, you want to keep it a bit more specific. So go and do the free property events, get a flavour of the different strategies, and then find one that you like the sound of. I think everybody should do buy-to-lets standard, and then think of something else that can supplement buy-to-lets: service accommodation, holiday lets, social housing, HMOs, for example, deal packaging, and then just focus on those two, learn as much as you can about the simple things, and then grow
Over
from
time.
there. So go from doing HMOs in one area to doing HMOs and serviced accommodation to doing it in multiple areas. Don't be scared to build a team. A lot of people in this industry seem to want to go it alone all the time, supported by VAs and things like that, which is great. But don't be scared to hire a member of staff and build a team beneath you, because as soon as you have more hands, you can get so much more work done.
Yeah.
The amount of viewings we get through, because I've got a member of staff who isn't distracted by all the stuff I'm distracted by, who can just go and do viewings.
100% agree with that. I had a psychological barrier of, they're called parents, and it was I could hear all my life. I came to Progressive 2013, and it was 2017 before I hired my first member of staff, because in my mind was always, if you're paying somebody else, you'll never be wealthy. And the reality is I wasn't paying somebody else, I was buying their time.
Yeah.
And the more staff you take on, the more time you buy. The richest people on this planet, they have other people working for them.
Well, you buy your own time.
Yeah.
Because to make money, you need to be doing deals and sales. So you need to be speaking to people, you need to be connecting, you need to be going out for dinner, you need to be operating at a high level. You don't need to be doing viewings. All you need to be doing is making sure that the person who's doing the viewings knows what they're looking for, and then you can just oversee that and quality control it. So view staff and view systems and view things like that as a way for you to increase the amount of time you can then spend on the best things. You know, and I always break it down this way. If you've got a 40-hour working week and you can only make time for 3 hours worth of sales calls, if you can eliminate 3 hours of something else to make that 3 hours of sales calls 6 hours of sales calls, what you've actually done is you've doubled the highest income generating thing you can do in your business. So your results should double, even though you've only increased it by a small amount. In percentage terms, you've increased it by a hell of a lot.
I remember Rob Moore's book Life Leverage. So if you've not read Rob Moore's book Life Leverage, read it. But I remember Rob mentors me, and he used to say to me, hire people. And I was thinking, Rob, I can't even afford to pay myself, never mind hire people. And so and one of the things he always says is you've got to work hard enough to not have to work hard. So if you listen to Sam say this about hire people and you're thinking, I can't even pay myself, you've got to work hard enough to not have to work hard. But the sooner you've got some income coming in, start putting it back into people and systems, and you'll scale a business.
But you don't have to spend a lot. You know, just bringing in someone to do admin full time, someone who can answer the phone, who can qualify calls, that will free up so much more of your time that whatever they cost, you'll make that back.
There's lots of stuff now, like the
quickly.
Kickstart scheme. Do you use that?
I don't think I applied for it. I meant to apply for it, but I heard from a few people that there wasn't a lot of responses.
Yeah.
So it kind of put me off. I thought it was a great idea and I was going to use it, but they just said they'd had a few ads out and it wasn't.
Right. So I've used it. I won't say how it goes, but I've used it because my staff might be listening. No, they're great. But it's good because you get the opportunity to test people out for a few months, and you're not paying for them. So you can use that for admin roles, etc. If you listen to this and you're thinking, how do I get started? How do I pay for people? Well, you can test people out using the government Kickstart scheme that was introduced during the lockdown. So there's ways out there that you can go out and look for, there's grants, there's schemes, there's stuff available that can help you. But at the same time, it is, part-time people, full-time people. Use the Tesco model. They don't let anybody for more than 20 hours, so they don't have to pay them additional income. Not anybody, I can't say that on a podcast, they do hire people full-time, but there's no national insurance if you keep it below a certain wage level. So just have a look into it. Reach out to people like Sam. He'll tell you how he got, how to scale his properties as well, how he scaled his staff members. Join the Progressive community. There's a lot of people in there hiring people. Don't just go hire somebody. Ask other people that have hired people, what the best method to do, what the best places to go are. But some really good content today, Sam. Really some really interesting things for people to think about in terms of getting started in property. So really appreciate you coming in and sharing your journey with us.
No problem.
People looking to find you. So you're in Leeds. You specialise in HMOs and conversions to HMOs. So you can do the sourcing, the conversions, the property management.
Yep.
And they can find you on Facebook, YouTube. You've got your podcast again. What you said the podcast was called one more time?
The Evolution of a Property Business.
The Evolution of a Property Business. So guys, Sam Waterson, go find him. You've been listening to the Progressive Property Podcast. I've been Kevin McDonald. He's been Sam Waterson. You've been absolutely amazing. I'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks.